There's a moment in every person's life when the world decides to break them, when everything is taken at once, your father, your freedom, your future. Most people accept the loss and move on, but every once in a while someone refuses. Someone decides that the very people who destroyed them will one day watch everything they built crumble to dust. This is not just a story about revenge. This is a story about what happens when you underestimate the wrong person for too long. Park Sae-ro-yi was not looking for trouble on his first day at a new school. He was simply a teenager, quiet, principled, trying to find his place. But within hours of arriving, he witnessed something he could not walk past. A classmate was being humiliated by one of the most untouchable boys in school, Jang Gun-won, the son of one of Korea's most powerful food industry moguls. Nobody else moved. Sae-ro-yi did. One punch. That's all it took to set the rest of his life on fire. Gun-won's father, Chairman Jang Dae-hee, arrived with the full weight of his power and gave Sae-ro-yi a choice. Apologize to my son and this disappears, or face the consequences. Sae-ro-yi looked him in the eye and said nothing. That silence cost him everything. He was expelled. His father was fired from the very company Chairman Jang owned. And then, as if the universe hadn't been cruel enough, Gun-won got behind the wheel one night and killed Sae-ro-yi's father in an accident. He walked away without a scratch, without accountability, without consequence, because his father made sure of it. Sae-ro-yi, burning with a grief too enormous to contain, went after Gun-won with everything he had, and ended up in handcuffs instead. 3 years in prison for a crime born entirely from loss. Here's what they don't tell you about people who survive the worst. Some of them don't just survive, they study. Inside that prison cell, Sae-ro-yi didn't break down and he didn't give up. He read Chairman Jang's autobiography from cover to cover, studying how the man built his empire, understanding his philosophy, mapping out his weaknesses. He wasn't mourning, he was preparing. When he walked out of prison, he had one goal that would consume the next 15 years of his life. Not just to get revenge, but to build something so powerful that Jang Dae-hee would have no choice but to watch him rise. With no degree and an ex-convict label following him everywhere, jobs were scarce. He spent 7 years working on deep-sea fishing boats, grueling, isolating, thankless work. While his peers were building careers, falling in love, building lives, he was hauling nets in the middle of the ocean, saving every coin, sharpening his resolve, waiting. When Sae-ro-yi first walked into Itaewon, a vibrant cosmopolitan neighborhood in Seoul full of dreamers and outsiders, something shifted in him. He looked at the life moving around him and said, "This is where I want to plant my flag." He opened Danbam, a small pub. Nothing remarkable from the outside. But look at the people inside and you'd understand immediately that this place was built differently. His kitchen was run by Hyun-yi, a transgender woman who cooked like her life depended on it, because in many ways it did. His security came from Sung Kwon, his former prison cellmate who had spent years in organized crime and was desperately looking for a reason to be something better. A young Guinean Korean man named Tony, searching for the father he had never known, joined as a server, a foreigner in a city that hadn't yet learned how to welcome him. These were the people the world had written off. These were Sae-ro-yi's people. And then came Jo Yi-seo, A genius with an IQ of 162, a social media following most brands would die for, and absolutely zero patience for anything that didn't challenge her. She walked into Dan Bam and within minutes understood exactly what it could become. She joined as manager, and Dan Bam was never the same again. Jang Dae-hee had not become Korea's most powerful food mogul by ignoring threats. When Dan Bam began gaining attention, he noticed, and he moved. He discovered that Sae-ro-yi had been quietly buying Janga Group stocks, a long-game move years in the making. He forced to sell off immediately. Then he purchased the very building Dan Bam operated from, with a plan to control every future lease, to squeeze the pub out of existence slowly and legally. What he didn't know was that Sae-ro-yi had already anticipated this. He liquidated everything and bought his own building outright, removing the chairman's leverage in a single move. Every trap the chairman set, Sae-ro-yi had already found the exit. But not every wound came from Jang Dae-hee. Gun-soo, the chairman's second son who had genuinely grown close to the Dan Bam team, chose to leave when Yi Seo made it clear she didn't love him. Heartbreak turned to bitterness, and bitterness turned into a weapon pointed directly at Sae-ro-yi. He crossed the floor and joined Janga Group, bringing inside knowledge with him. Enemies were no longer just outside the door. The moment everything shifted started in a kitchen. Hyun-yi entered a national cooking competition and won, becoming the first transgender female chef champion on a major broadcast television show. The country couldn't stop talking about it, and suddenly Dan Bam wasn't just a pub in Itaewon anymore. It was a story, a movement, a brand. A major investor came knocking. Franchise talks began. The business expanded. IC Group was born, and Park Sae-ro-yi, the boy who had been expelled and jailed and dismissed at every turn, was now the CEO of a corporation going head-to-head with Janga Group. The woman he had loved since his youth, Oh-soo-ah, had spent years climbing the ranks of Janga Group, the company that destroyed his family. It was complicated. It always had been. But when she finally saw Chairman Yang for what he truly was, she made a decision that cost her everything she had built. She dismantled herself to help bring him down, repaying a debt not to Sae-ro-yi, but to his father's memory. Every empire falls. Janga Group, the untouchable, the dominant, the feared, began to crumble. Allies abandoned the chairman one by one. Investors walked away. The company that had crushed a teenage boy for refusing to bow began to collapse under the weight of its own rot. In a final act of desperation, Chairman Jang Dae-hee, the man who had demanded Sae-ro-yi kneel before him years ago, went to find him, and he kneeled, not out of respect, out of survival. He wept and pleaded for mercy, for Sae-ro-yi to save what remained of his company. Sae-ro-yi's answer was a corporate takeover. IC Group absorbed Janga completely. He didn't just defeat the man who destroyed his life. He consumed everything he had ever built. There's a version of this story where Sae-ro-yi becomes bitter, where the prison changes him, where the grief hollows him out, where he loses himself somewhere between the fishing boats and the empty years. That version doesn't exist, because he chose, every single day, to build instead of break. He built a team of people nobody else wanted, a business nobody believed in, a future nobody thought he deserved. And when the most powerful man in his world finally came crawling to his door, he was ready. Some people are not made to be forgotten. They are made to make the people who dismiss them regret it for the rest of their lives. Park Sae-ro-yi was one of those people, and if you've ever been written off, overlooked, or underestimated, so are you.